I am Flavia Bellieni Zimmermann from the Australian Institute of International Affairs in Western Australia, and today, through the Centre for Muslim States and Societies at the University of Western Australia, and with the support of the UWA Public Policy Institute, we have with us Professor Raymond Taras, and we'll be discussing xenophobia and Islamophobia. What is the current environment in Australia today? Thank you for being with us, Professor.
My great pleasure.
Professor Taras, if you can discuss today what is the political environment in Australia regarding to xenophobia and Islamophobia.
Well, you're asking me this in the middle of the election campaign. I think it's a little bit tamer than in other countries. If I was in Spain the last couple of weeks, if I was in Finland over the last couple of weeks, if I was in several other countries, including Ukraine, I would find that there would be far more xenophobic discourse than there is here in Australia. So I think it might come as a surprise for Australians to hear that this election campaign seems to be running in a kind of a routine way without any kind of recourse. I know not one nation is always going to be an issue, but I think as we've been debating in our conference today about one nation, I mean it's the exception rather than the rule. So I think the election campaign is going quite well, and I don't see much xenophobia popping out in the way that just about any European country right now will have higher levels of xenophobia.
Thank you very much, Professor Taras. And if you can please share with us, in your opinion, which were the main political factors that might make Australian views regarding xenophobia and Islamophobia don't be as aggravated as in Europe?
Well, I think in the case of the European Union, it's an obvious cause, and that is that a lot of countries, whether it's Italy, for example, or Britain, thanks to Brexit, or several other countries, are very critical of the European Union. We're also going to have elections in the Europe Parliament in a couple of weeks' time. There's discussion, can you believe it, in the European Union about how to elect the president of the European Commission. They still haven't figured that out. So no wonder there's such a backlash in much of Europe to the European Union. So you can talk about anti-immigration because a lot of this immigration that has occurred in Europe is the result of people not really having a voice. The people who are in these countries that do not have a voice, they've been deprived of a voice for a variety of reasons, such as collusion between the great parties and keeping the smaller parties marginalized. But I think that it's really putting the European Union, reforming it, making the process of electing a president of the European Union and of the European Commission and of the European Parliament in order. I think so. That's really what the hostility in Europe is. Australia does not have this problem, unless the states start fighting each other, and Queensland has a disagreement with Western Australia. That would be the equivalent.
Thank you for sharing this with us. And Professor Taras, if you can share with us how the attacks in Christchurch and in Sri Lanka might bring a different perception to Muslim community in Australia and diverse communities in Australia.
Yes. Well, Australia has had a lot of support for multiculturalism. I think, according to the Scanlon report, it was about 88% support for multiculturalism. That doesn't necessarily mean that because people support multiculturalism, they're going to not engage in baiting of Muslims and of Jews and Aboriginals, of course. So I'm not sure the extent to which Christchurch is going to have a dramatic effect on Australia. Maybe there's greater securitization, in the ministries and the departments, but I don't think there's going to be anything overtly totalitarian in closing free speech and white supremacy. It's very unlikely to happen. I believe in the Australian context, and so we have to put up with it and marginalize them and make them of minimal importance.
Well, thank you so much. And wrapping up our interview, do you see in Australia that multiculturalism would still be the leading political trend, watering down Islamophobia and xenophobia, or do you think that political actors such as Pauline Hanson could shift the political discourse to more anti-migrant and more anti-Muslim sentiment in the country?
Well, there's several other people besides Pauline Hanson who are responsible for engaging in anti-Muslim rhetoric. I'm not quite sure about multiculturalism. Again, from my experience in Europe, multiculturalism is dead. It's a reality. Multiculturalism is a political reality, but no European leader is ever going to use multiculturalism as a way of getting votes from Europeans. That's all over with. It's exactly the same thing in my home country, which is Canada. Multiculturalism is not a very correct word. So even Justin Trudeau, of the Canadian Prime Minister, talks about Canada entering a post-national society. So I think Australia probably would be well positioned to talk about creating a post-national society. But multiculturalism, I'm really surprised about the survival of this concept in Australia. I hope it's something a little bit more original and maybe more uniting will be created so that Australians can rally around and support a particular type of rhetoric that really makes sense to them, rather than, like I say, the archaic term of multiculturalism.
Thank you for being with us, okay. Professor Taras, right. And thank you for being with us. And for more information, please visit our website, www.internationalaffairs.org.au. Thank you.